Written by Murphy here, back with a book review. Today I am reviewing The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. This was published in 2000, 22 years ago, which to me feels recent, but it's not that recent. And it won the Pulitzer in 2001, so got some acclaim. This book is, I would call it a historical novel. It's set in 1938 up to the end of it is the 50s. I don't recall if it's the early 50s or the late 50s. And so it's set in that history for sure, and that's an interesting time in history because it's definitely World War II. This is World War II before America got involved. It's set in America for the most part. And there were two main characters, Sam Clay and Joseph Kavalier. These guys were cousins. Kavalier came over he came over from Prague to America, to New York, to find his cousin. Let's see, Joseph was 19, his cousin Sam was 17, and they come together, and through a series of adventures, they start making comics. So World War II coincides with the golden age of comics. Comic books is definitely a historic moment, so this kind of traces what's going on with comic books at this time, at the same time that World War II is happening. So there is, these characters are Jewish, so this is part of the plot. They are Jewish and they're coming to terms with their own Jewishness in a world that is blazingly anti-Semitic in many ways. Joseph was studying to be an artist in Prague, took a side road and went off into studying magic and being able to escape, which ended up being useful as he was trying to escape. He was unable to escape from Prague, although his family took all their money to get him a train ride. He was not actually able to get on the train because Nazis, red tape. And he was a Jewish person, so he ended up using his skills in escapery to leave the country. It's a very interesting story involving Jewish mysticism. And the story all throughout is very much like a comic book because it's fantastic adventures. Crazy things are happening. And there's all these subplots going on too. So there's the story of the two individuals, the two boys, men, the golden age of comics. Sam had already been interested in drawing. He fancied himself something of an artist, so he was trying to be a comic artist. Joseph, when he came in, blew him out of the water because he was so much better. So they ended up working together, and Sam had an instinct for creating the stories. Now, the history of the comic books, the history of World War II, also was the history of these men, so there was love involved. The love story, which is also what shows up in comic books too. So this story is more complicated than the usual comic book because it's a humongous novel, but it has these elements. It is very satisfying to a person who enjoys comic books and graphic novels, which I'm certainly one of those people. Now, in the 30s through the 50s, the late 30s through the 50s, was another particular moment in history the character, their homosexuality appears too, because Sam, as it happens, comes to terms with his homosexuality throughout this story too. So that's kind of a B plot, which is similar to how the comics happen. So there's the love story, there's the adventure, there's the realization of who these people are, and it hits again and again and again. There's tragedy, there's romance, there's revelations. All these things keep happening. It's a great story. I did enjoy it. The action as prose felt very yow, splat, bang, like you would find in a comic. So it was highly emotional. So it was a pleasant read. It was adventurous, non-stop tension, new characters, things you didn't expect. I did like that they had a pretty strong female character too. The woman that Joseph falls in love with. It's good to have a strong character in a comic, you know? So she was great. And she follows through the whole way. Actually, she was there from a lot of the beginning. There was some like back and forth. The very beginning of the book was like the guy looking back towards where the actual start of the action happens. It was well done. I can see why it won the Pulitzer. It was well written too. So it was a fun read. You got something out of it because it was history. But it wasn't that hard to read. It was a fun read. It's high quality book candy. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. It was long, but it didn't feel too long. There was just action, all these things happening. I enjoyed it. Wasn't that challenging, but I felt pretty satisfied at the end. It was pretty much what I wanted. All right. I don't know. What do you think?